Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Saide and you're watching my April Plan With Me video. I'll be showing you my April spreads later on, but first we're flipping through my March spreads. So for March, the theme was curiosities. You can check out that video if you haven't already. I'll put a link in the video. And I really love this theme because curiosities is basically a collection of random items that make up a life, or a style, I guess. And I really love playing around with that and seeing what items I enjoy and how to put them together to form a sort of cohesive spread or ID. And in March I also launched an Etsy store. Oh my god. But in my spreads, especially my weekly spreads, I incorporated some of those stickers that I created. So if you feel like checking it out, please do. I'll put a link in down below. But enough about March. We're moving into April. So I have to admit that even before last weekend, I did not have any idea about a theme for April. So I asked my boyfriend if he had any ideas, and the first thing he came with, I mean, like within 3 seconds, was the theme trains. And I thought about it and figured, why not, actually? Because trains could work. You could do all kinds of things with trains. You have train tracks and the trains itself. So yeah, the theme this month is trains. So here you see me creating my opening spread, which is always sort of decorative spread, and I really like using the opening spread of my month to experiment with especially watercoloring, but also different sorts of media, different designs, experimenting with my style basically. And I have to admit, I don't really look back at these spreads throughout the month, but I love making them just because, well, like I said, I use them as a sort of development of my personal skill. So yeah, long story short, I'm creating a sort of artsy spread in which I'm experimenting with my own style. So I googled pictures of trains, and this is one of the top pictures that if you Google train, it will come up. And I figured it would be fun to do a sort of perspective picture with a train coming at you, and then have a sort of sign or like the name of the station be April. So that's the idea of this spread. And you can see I actually did this spread twice because first I doodled it in my bullet journal with pencil. And then, yeah, I thought I would do watercoloring. Yeah, although the Leuchtturm journal is great, it's not so great for watercoloring, especially if you like to go over several times. The water will just damage the paper a lot. So I copied the spread, or, well, I doodled it again with pencil on watercolor paper. But in the end, I really like it because when I doodled the picture on watercolor paper, this time I used a ruler to really get the perspective right. And I think it's a little more, well, accurate, I would say, than the one I did in my bullet journal. And I love working with watercolor paper. It has such a nice texture to work with. And now I'm using watercolor to give some color or some depth to the spread. And I kept it kind of simple because I'm still practicing a lot with watercoloring. Some spreads come out amazing, or some stuff like the stickers I did for my Etsy shop, they came out amazing. But especially full landscapes like this, I still struggle with because, well, it's so hard to create depth as well as figure out what to color and what not to. So I'm thinking, in hindsight, maybe I should have added a little more detail in the background to create that sort of depth and to be able to, well, have some color differences. But it's a learning experience, and I think it's fine for now. So after finishing the watercoloring, I cut down the watercolor paper to a sort of size of my bullet journal, at least on one edge. And then I used a glue stick to really stick it in my bullet journal. And I know there's some different preferences about sticking a lot of stuff in your bullet journal. I personally really like that your journal becomes thicker. And I also really like that the opening spread will be very firm to the touch, so it's easy to find. But I'm curious to see whether you like this as well, or whether you like to keep everything sort of flat or your journal as thin as possible. So comment down below and let me know whether you enjoy a thin bullet journal or like to add a lot of stuff. So moving on, we're going to my monthly overview. Now, this is a little bit weird because here I came up with this idea of having different trains and have each segment of a train be a day. Does that make any sense? Well, it does if you watch the video, of course. So I came up with this idea and then I created it and I ended up hating it. I thought it was way too busy. Actually, at the beginning, before creating my spreads, I was playing around with the idea of keeping this month all black and white because I thought it would go with a sort of industrial feeling of a train. But then I figured April is a springtime month and it's getting colorful outside, so I want some color in my bullet journal. So I opted to go with typical train colors, which are basically primary colors and green. But, well, after making this spread, I thought it was way too busy. I lost overview. You can see me struggling with the numbers in the boxes already. I didn't know how to make it better. Then I added some shadow, but I hated it. So after finishing this video, I went back and created a different spread. I just stuck some paper on top of there and created a whole new one. And that's the one you see in the picture here on the right. So yeah, that happened. You see in the picture here on the right. So yeah, that happened. Anyway, onto my habit and mood tracker. So for my habit tracker, I actually have a very similar idea to my monthly overview, except I executed it way better this time. So here again, we have different trains, but instead of having different compartments with each compartment being a tracker, I figured each compartment has several windows, so the trackers could be the windows. And that's what I created. And then I just Googled some example trains to figure out what sort of colors trains come in and used those. But this time I used the colors quite sparingly so that it wouldn't become too busy or too chaotic. And for my mood tracker, I first wanted to do a sort of railway map, different stations, and then have different things for each day where I could color the mood. And then when I Googled train maps or railway maps, I saw these sort of styled maps like I created on the right. And I figured that would actually be really cool. So I basically have this imaginary map of different cities or villages where the train comes through or the tracks come through, and for each day there is a village or a city and I will color it according to my mood. Very simple. So I kind of love these spreads. They're very simple and very minimalistic in color, but still enough that you feel like it's spring. So last month I needed a brain dump page because I had so many ideas or so many things I needed to write down and didn't want to ruin my weekly spreads. So I created a brain dump page, and I figured this month I would set up one just in advance because, well, usually they turn out better if you plan for them in advance. So I just created this very simple brain dump page and left it quite empty so that I can use it however I want. And for my weekly spreads, I actually came up with another fun idea, I think. So I used to do a weekly calendar on the left of my weekly spreads and then have sort of dailies throughout the rest of the spread. But I figured it would be very hard to incorporate a train theme if I didn't change it up somehow. So instead of making my usual style of a weekly overview, I put it in a train. So I created this train on the bottom left, where I used a similar idea to my habit tracker and used the windows for the days of the week. And I think it's very simple, this idea, but it really gets a train theme in here. And for the rest of this weekly spread, I struggled still a little bit. I was still very much with my head into the curiosities theme and just random objects. And maybe I should have used less brown paper and more like a black paper. But yeah, I'm not really sure. And that takes us to the final flip through. So I have to admit, I wasn't fully into the train theme when I created these spreads. And I altered some details in the end that I did not film. I'm so sorry. Now, actually, if you're curious about how I use these spreads or what alterations I may have made, you can always check out my Instagram because they will definitely show up over there. And if you're curious about what I come up with next month, please subscribe to my channel and turn on the notifications if you want to get notified. As always, if you have any suggestions or ideas, leave them down below in the comments. I really love reading those, and your suggestions actually help me out quite a lot. And then I'd like to thank you for watching this video, and I hope to see you another time. Bye bye!